It has been called the worst day in American history, September 11th, 2001, a day that started out as just another Tuesday. By nightfall, nearly 3,000 citizens were lost, and we found ourselves living in an entirely new world, with history itself broken into the pre-9/11 era and the post-9/11 era. The attack has been called not just a strike against America, but a crime against humanity.
It shook us to the very foundations of our national character. We had never been attacked at home, and attacked so viciously, attacked so suddenly. What happened then is that it broke away some of the artificiality of our lives. There was a realization that we have to be America again, and we have to be what America was in the very beginning, and not lose that now because we've been hit so hard.
From the ashes of death and destruction, a new America arose. We rallied together in support of our deepest principles. The distinctions and divisions that had grown in our midst fell away, and for a time, our country was filled with a spirit of unity not seen since Pearl Harbor. We were one, we were together, we were united in a purpose and spirit in the best traditions of the American experience.
The terrorists who attacked us on 9/11 didn't distinguish between Republicans or Democrats or white or black or Christian, Jewish, Muslim. Their victims were all of those. The fact is that the tragedy of 9/11 pulled America together and showed us what we really should appreciate every day as we squabble politically or there are other divisions in our country, that we're all part of the American family.
On September 14th, 2001, as Americans grieved and grappled with this new and frightening world, an event took place that demonstrated, as much as any event in our country's history, what the spirit of America is all about. Standing atop the nation's capital, the National Cathedral is the highest point in Washington, D.C., and symbolically looks out over the political and economic capital of the world, as if to say we are strong and united under the watchful eyes of God. That day, with the smoke still rising from the Pentagon visible in the distant horizon, the leaders of the world came together to share a moment of unity and grieve together the losses in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. The service knew no Christian, no Jew, no Muslim. Our divisions fell away, and for that one shining moment, we were all Americans and citizens of the world.
It was special, and the founders would be proud. They'd say, "You get it. We were worried about you, but you get it." And the cathedral is at the highest point on Mount St. Albans in Washington, looking down on a government that's so often broken and a country that's so often divided. So what perfect place for this coming together after this tragedy.
What happened here on September 14th is legendary, and people talk about it all the time. This sense that at the moment of deepest crisis and deepest fear, this was the place they turned. And when they did turn here, they found this powerful interfaith celebration of America as we grieved together and looked for ways to make our way through a very, very dark time.
It was a great thought to bring everybody together, and it was so important that we strove at that time to say, okay, we got to pray. You know, we can't do this by ourselves. This is a nation under God. We've always been that way.
One shining moment, when in the aftermath of 9/11, sort of the same beam of light seems to strike all of us in this country in the same way. We all glitter, and we all are caught up in a determination to achieve the same goals together as one, as a nation of one.
The unity we experienced hearkened to an earlier time in American history and rekindled the very roots of our nation and the intentions of our founding fathers. George Washington himself, in his farewell address, reminded Americans that of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In earlier writings, Washington made it clear that this focus on religion was to include all religions, that the freedom to worship in accordance with one's own faith was paramount to us fulfilling the dreams of this new nation.
The citizens of the United States of America have a right to applaud themselves for having given to mankind examples of an enlarged and liberal policy, a policy worthy of imitation. All possess alike a liberty of conscience and community and citizenship, for happily, the government of the United States, which gives to bigotry no sanction, to persecution no assistance, requires only that they who live under its protection should demean themselves as good citizens, and nothing more.
In the days and weeks that followed, our country experienced an outpouring of love and support, not just for the victims, but for all fellow Americans who were grieving together. Both houses of Congress gathered on the steps of the Capitol, Republicans and Democrats together, to pray and remember the fallen. President Bush acted immediately and called for unity. He visited not only the Pentagon and New York, but a Washington, D.C. mosque, where he declared these acts of violence violate the fundamental tenets of the Islamic faith. He said, "The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam," and warned Americans that in our anger and emotion, our fellow Americans must treat each other with respect.
The president himself set the right tone. I mean, George Bush right away said, "Do not strike out at these people. They're our countrymen." We saw in the reports of hate crimes the climbing for about 30 days, and then when the president spoke, boom, it just collapsed.
We came together in no time with one voice. United we stand, divided we fall. We are all against hate. We are all for love and for social justice. No one is not the child of God. Everyone is the child of God. My friend, after September 11, we were united.
Sadly, the time of coming together after 9/11 wouldn't last long. Within a few months, America embarked on its war on terror, which included 2 wars on foreign soil, in Iraq and Afghanistan, the latter of which is now the longest war in American history. At home, we as Americans retreated back to our corners and the lines of demarcation that had pulled us apart before that fateful day. In the years since, political divides have grown more fierce and vicious. Economic divides have become more pronounced through the Great Recession. And in the past several years, a new divide has arisen, this time along religious lines, through a rising tide of anti-Muslim sentiment that has gripped our culture.
President Bush did make some statements. There were a lot of groups that stepped out and said, we're not against Islam, we're not against Muslims, we're just against the bad guys and the people who have attacked us. And that did last, I would say, more or less for, 7, 8 years. And I think slowly it's becoming okay to be politically incorrect, and it's becoming okay to be against Muslims to protect ourselves as Americans.
A politician these days can still make a lot of political hay by challenging a person for receiving Saudi funds or someone being friendly with a Muslim organization, and can cast innuendo and so forth in the eyes of many because there are those who are suspicious.
The fact that you had this Murfreesboro situation where they couldn't build a mosque in their own town where they'd been for decades and decades, the ugly, ugly anti-Muslim rallies that we've seen in places across the country, the way that Park 51 was exploited by presidential candidates, no less. The fact that you have 24 states passing laws in their legislature, or now considering laws in their legislature, banning Sharia law from being applied in their state when there's nobody who wants to apply Sharia law in their states. I mean, they passed a law in Oklahoma, a referendum in Oklahoma against Sharia law, and there's nobody in Oklahoma wanting to enforce Sharia law, and the guys who voted for it had no idea what it was about. I mean, this is a situation where we're striking out against Islam and we don't even know what we're talking about. And the concern I have is more than just the insult to a religion. It's that it undercuts the very fabric of who we are as America.
In 2010, the plans by one American pastor to stage a Quran burning received attention worldwide. General David Petraeus warned of the terrible repercussions as we address security concerns throughout the Muslim world. President Obama himself was forced to publicly condemn the action, if for no other reason than to send a message to an increasingly suspicious world that America itself is not anti-Muslim. A year earlier, former Secretary of the Army Togo West was appointed by then Secretary of Defense Robert Gates to help lead an investigation into the tragic Fort Hood massacre, an attack by a lone Muslim serviceman at Fort Hood, Texas, that killed 13 soldiers and civilians and injured 30 others. His conclusion was that America needed to focus its attention not merely on Muslim extremism, but extremism of every sort.
And when we did the review, we were looking at the issue of extremism, religious extremism and other kinds of extremism, but principally religious, and how that would affect that case and how that would affect us going forward. When our report was reviewed in the Congress, they wanted to know why we hadn't focused on Islamic extremism. Tells you a whole lot, just a whole lot.
Much of the fear and suspicion that we see across the country comes from a simple lack of understanding and knowledge about Islam and how it fits within the American experience. Luis Lugo, director of the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life, points out that in the years since 9/11, most Americans are no further along in their knowledge of Islam than they were before 9/11.
It is really striking that 10 years after 9/11, we still have a majority of Americans who tell us that they do not know much about Islam. They know little or nothing at all. It is still the case that over 50%, well over 50% of Americans tell us they do not know a Muslim. And those two things are very, very important, because knowledge of Islam, and particularly personal knowledge of Muslim Americans, is a very positive force in people's attitudes towards Muslims. Clearly, this is a challenge in terms of Americans and their understanding of Islam, and sort of broadening the circle, as it were, of inclusion in American society. We've seen this picture before, however. That's been the story of the United States, where in the First Amendment, we put forth a very strong commitment to religious liberty, but it's historically working that out, has been a challenge.
According to Asma Gul Hassan, author of the book Red, White, and Muslim, healing this divide is among the great challenges for the next decade, and will require a new understanding of what it really means to be a Muslim. She says, out of all the cultures in the world, true Islamic values, as embodied in the Quran and in the life of the Prophet Muhammad, most closely resemble American values. In America, Islam has the chance to fulfill the values it really stands for, without politics or patriarchy to hold it back. Even amidst the divisions and challenges facing us today, there is hope. Hope that in future generations, these gaps will be bridged, and that our country can live still closer to the original intent of our founding fathers. As a nation, we have been through trials like this before, and we will go through them again. And each time, we emerge stronger, more unified, and truly more American.
We have no choice. We have to get together. this great experiment that is America can't fail. We can't allow it to fail.
The National Cathedral calls itself, if you look on its banner, a house of prayer for all peoples. I mean, this is a nation founded because of the need for religious freedom by those who came over from the mother country. We were born in the belief of religious freedom. And that's been part of what we've had to learn as we've grown up as a nation. As a nation, if you mean religious freedom, you truly must mean tolerance. Perhaps I'm just an eternal optimism, but I have this sense that we will get there, but not without a lot of hard work.
As an American Muslim, I will continue to fight for an America that is open to all. An America that is proud of its interest in science and in human rights. An America that is interested in all people and not only one specific religious community. And I hope my fellow Americans take me seriously and take America seriously and become a voice for hope everywhere, a positive voice of love. You want to be that in the name of Jesus? Let it be. Jesus is still our hero and our Prince of Peace. And I say that as a Muslim. I have no problem with that. I'll take Christianity with my right hand, and I'll take Judaism with my left hand, and Islamism in my heart, and go all over the world to say, this is America. We are all one people. We have nothing but love.
As our nation moves forward past the 10th anniversary of the darkest day in American history, it is our hope that just as our troops stand together in a united front contending for our country, in remembrance of 9/11, our country will come together once again to face our shared challenges together, that we will find a way to return to the greatest aspects of our character, a society based on common ideals and a commitment to seek the best each culture has to offer, a culture where anyone can be an American and all can come to represent the highest expression of the American dream, a nation conceived in liberty where we can stand together as we the people of the United States of America. This, then, is a call to greatness for all of us, a call for all of us to take a time out for remembrance of where we've been and a reflection on who we really are and what we really stand for. A time to restore mutual respect, dignity, grace, and indeed, love for one another as brothers and sisters. These are the qualities that transcend all others. These are the qualities that can bridge every political, economic, ethnic, social, or religious divide. These are the qualities that can change nations and change the world and make America once again that shining city on a hill.